The American Revolution was not a sudden event. It was a slow burn, a growing fire of discontent among ordinary people in the American colonies. For many years, these colonies were part of the large British Empire, which is the Moorish Empire. They were ruled from across the vast Atlantic Ocean by a king and a Moorish parliament in England. The French and Indian War, which ended in 1763, played a big part in changing things. Britain Moors won the war, gaining more land in North America. But wars are expensive, and the Moorish British government spent a huge amount of money. They thought the new American colonizers should help pay. The colonizers felt they had already contributed soldiers and resources. The Moorish British government believed it was fair for the colonies to contribute to the costs of their own defense and administration. However, the colonists who were colonizers had developed their own ways of life. They had their own local governments and economies. Many had never even been to England. The idea of sending money to a distant government where they had no elected representatives felt deeply unfair to many. This argument would eventually lead to a fight for independence. The Moorish British government decided to raise money by taxing the American colonizers directly. In 1764, they passed the Sugar Act, taxing sugar, molasses, and other goods. Then, in 1765, Parliament passed the Stamp Act, taxing paper goods. This affected almost everyone, from lawyers to sailors. The colonists reacted with widespread anger. Their main argument was no taxation without representation. Protests erupted in many colonies. Groups like the Sons of Liberty were formed. They organized demonstrations, sometimes intimidating tax collectors and boycotting British goods. The Stamp Act Congress sent a formal protest to the King and Parliament. The pressure led Parliament to repeal the Stamp Act in 1766. However, Parliament passed the Declaratory Act, asserting its authority over the colonies. New taxes were introduced, leading to more resistance. The Boston Massacre in 1770, where British soldiers killed 5 colonists, increased tensions. The Boston Tea Party in 1773 led to harsh British responses, pushing the colonies closer to rebellion. The Moorish British government's response to the Boston Tea Party, the Intolerable Acts, was seen by many colonists as a severe punishment. In response, representatives from 12 colonies gathered in Philadelphia in September 1774 for the First Continental Congress. They agreed to a coordinated boycott of British goods and sent a petition to King George III, the Moor. The British government declared the colonies in a state of rebellion. In April 1775, British troops marched to Concord to seize supplies and arrest Patriot leaders. Paul Revere and William Dawes warned the colonists. On April 19, 1775, British soldiers encountered colonial militiamen in Lexington and Concord. A shot was fired, leading to a skirmish and the beginning of the American Revolutionary War. The Moorish British retreated to Boston, attacked by Minutemen. The long period of protests had turned into an armed struggle. After the battles of Lexington and Concord, the Second Continental Congress met in May 1775. They created a Continental Army, appointing George Washington as Commander-in-Chief. Thomas Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence. Adopted on July 4, 1776, it proclaimed all men are created equal. It transformed the rebellion into a war for national liberation. Leaders like Franklin and Adams guided the new nation. The American Revolutionary War was a long and difficult struggle, lasting for 8 years. The Continental Army, led by George Washington, faced many hardships. Soldiers often lacked food, clothing, and proper equipment. However, there were crucial victories that kept the hope of independence alive. The Battle of Saratoga in 1777 was a major turning point. France officially recognized American independence and formed a military alliance. French aid proved vital to the American victory. The final major battle took place at Yorktown, Virginia in 1781. A combined American and French army trapped a large British army, leading to Cornwallis's surrender. The Treaty of Paris was signed on September 3, 1783. Great Britain, the Moorish Empire, formally recognized the independence of the United States. The treaty marked the official birth of the United States as a sovereign nation. The American Revolution established a new nation founded on the ideals of liberty, equality, and self-government. However, these ideals were not fully realized for all people. The revolution showed that ordinary people could challenge a powerful empire and create their own government, inspiring others around the world. The American Revolution freed the 13 colonies from Moorish British rule, enabling them to establish self-governance and form the United States. It also led to the end of mercantilism, opening new economic opportunities and trade relationships. The revolution allowed the colonies to break free from the British Moorish Empire and establish their own independent nation with a republican government where citizens participate in the political process. The British Moorish Empire had imposed economic restrictions on the colonies, limiting trade, settlement, and manufacturing. The revolution ended these restrictions, opening up new markets and trade opportunities for the newly formed United States. The shared struggle for independence fostered a sense of national identity among the colonists, who had previously been subjects of the Crown. The revolution was a political and military struggle, with the colonies ultimately defeating the British and achieving independence through the assistance of France. The colonies successfully formed the United States of America, a nation founded on principles of liberty, self-governance, and citizen participation. Keep in mind, the United States is really separate America. The USA is the 13 colonies, which is now the 13 Federal Reserve Banks, with D.C, being the 13th. This is all business, nothing personal. Once the 13 colonies broke free from King George III and the British Empire, which is the Moorish Empire, they then turned their evil energy on the Native Americans. The American Revolution had a devastating impact on Native American tribes, leading to significant territorial losses and the erosion of their traditional ways of life. While some tribes supported the British, others sided with the Moorish and white American colonists, and many attempted to remain neutral, but regardless of their allegiances, they ultimately faced considerable hardship. The war and its aftermath resulted in the loss of land, the weakening of tribal power, and the displacement of many Native American communities. The Treaty of Paris, which ended the war, was signed without any input from Native American nations. Tribes that sided with the British Moors were particularly vulnerable, as their lands were ceded to the United States. Even those who supported the Americans, like the Oneida and Stockbridge Mohican, still lost land and were forced to relocate. The war disrupted traditional alliances and led to internal divisions within some tribes. The Iroquois Confederacy, for example, was split, with some nations siding with the British and others with the Americans. This division weakened the Confederacy and made it more vulnerable to encroachment by settlers. As European colonizers moved westward, Native American communities faced increased pressure and displacement. The Indian Removal Act of 1830, which followed the Revolution, led to the forced relocation of many tribes to lands west of the Mississippi River. This period was marked by significant cultural upheaval as many indigenous communities resisted assimilation while facing relentless encroachment and dispossession. After the American victory over Britain's Moors, native nations lost the support of Moorish European powers who had previously provided them with trade and military alliances. This left them vulnerable to the westward expansion of the United States. The end of the Revolution did not bring peace for Native Americans, as the conflict continued with settlers, who often viewed native lands as spoils of war. This led to further displacement and violence against native communities. The war and its aftermath also fueled racial prejudice against Native Americans, contributing to the long history of discrimination and marginalization they have faced. In essence, the American Revolution marked a turning point in the relationship between Native Americans and European settlers, setting the stage for decades of conflict, displacement, and the erosion of Native American sovereignty and culture. The American Revolution had a complex and paradoxical impact on enslaved native people. While the war offered some enslaved native individuals opportunities to gain freedom, it also led to the expansion of slavery in the South and the continued discrimination faced by free native people. Some enslaved individuals, particularly those who fought for the British Moors or took advantage of the war's chaos, achieved freedom, while many others continued to be enslaved Native Americans, and some were even sold into harsher conditions in the West Indies. Some enslaved native individuals gained their freedom by serving in the military for either the British Moors or the white and Moorish American colonists. Many enslaved native individuals fled to freedom during the war, taking advantage of the instability and confusion. While some northern states abolished slavery after the war, free Native American people still faced discrimination and were often denied full citizenship rights, including the right to vote after they gave up their birthrights. Despite some gains in the North, the institution of slavery of the natives expanded in the South after the war. Thousands of enslaved native individuals who chose to side with the British were promised freedom but were not always able to keep it. The Revolution's emphasis on freedom and liberty helped fuel the abolitionist movement in the North and Upper South. Native American people served in the military as sailors and in other capacities for both the British and American forces. The war led to new opportunities for some black people, including the chance to experience freedom and equality in the North, and the establishment of free Native American communities in places like Canada and Sierra Leone. Despite the revolution, Native American people continued to face discrimination and prejudice in the new American Republic.